Hey there, this is Jonathan, and in the following set of tutorials, we are going to take a look at my favorite builder for WordPress, which is called Oxygen. Now, it's a little bit different than just a page builder. This is actually a website builder. It does a lot of things that you could do even if you were hand coding websites, but with the same kind of flexibility of a builder environment. Now, in order to take a look at what Oxygen does and how it's different, one of the things you might want to check out is how it's different from some of the other really well-known builders, such as Elementor, Beaver Builder, and Divi. So you'll take a look and you'll see that it has lifetime support and lifetime updates with one price, which is really, really great. You'll see it has a lot of the same design features and some that say that they're missing, like the JS parallax, but you'll find that one of the things that's great about Oxygen is that it's possible for you to build just about anything in it. So there are certainly ways that you can find online that you can include parallax on a page that uses Oxygen. So some other things you'll see are breakpoints and display widths and all sorts of stuff, and then also stacking columns vertically and how that works. You're able to be very defined in Oxygen exactly how you want things to be laid out, which is really quite amazing. It has full support for designing the headers and footers and all sorts of other elements. It uses Flexbox. That's really important. Now, certainly there is CSS Grid, and maybe that will come in the future, but right now it uses a really robust Flexbox layout engine. And one thing that really differentiates Oxygen from the other builders is the size of the output. Not only is the HTML really, really clean overall, and it has much less nested divs, it's optimized. The code is really optimized, and it outputs less files and smaller files than a lot of the other builders. I mean, look at 184 kilobytes that's output versus 1.3 megs of Elementor. Now, that doesn't always mean that you're going to have a faster versus a slow site. That still depends on how you use images and JavaScript and all sorts of other things, and you will certainly find some features for Oxygen that help you create the smallest and most efficient files possible. It really is an amazing engine for stuff like that, and it approaches more of the performance you might get from a hand-coded website. Whereas the other ones have a little bit more bloat, but if you're on a fast server, you can still get pretty good results, obviously. Some other things to look into are the WooCommerce integration, and then also Gutenberg integration is kind of an interesting thing. Now, as you go down, you'll find out more about it. Obviously, there's a lot of great features, but one of the great features I love about Oxygen overall is the ability for you to test it without having to buy it. So if you go to Try Oxygen at the very bottom, you can click on a pre-built example website, type in the numbers, and then click OK. It will send you to a home page, and I'm going to get back to where you should land. That looks something like this in just a second. Now, one of the things that you'll find is that Oxygen is a little bit slower to load than some of the other builders. That's where Beaver Builder is just like outstanding. You click and it's instantly editing, but Oxygen has to load all the short codes and parse everything, so it just is a little bit slower. Now, the way Oxygen works is you'll see all of the different elements are laid out on the page just like you would see in a lot of other builders. When you click on them, it selects it, and you'll see that you can also kind of go up through your nested structure, which is kind of cool. And you'll see that when you have something selected, you'll see the properties for that object over on the left. Now, depending upon the type of object that you have or element that you have selected, you may see different items or properties in your primary panel. You'll see that that will change depending upon the type of object once again. There you go. But the Advanced tab will pretty much be consistent across every type of element that you go to. So that's really kind of nice. That way you have a consistency of knowing where to find certain features. For example, you'll see that you have a really robust layout feature here. So let me go to that. You'll see we have those layout features here by default because this is a section. But if I go to layout, you'll see that it has turned on those same exact elements in the advanced tab. So the primary is just primary tab is just giving you access to particular features that are also in the advanced tab as well. Okay, so anyway, next thing that I want you to look at over here is at the top you'll see that it has an ID. Now typically anytime you create a new object or a new element like a section, you'll see that it's automatically given an ID. And so that ID can be used for all the styling, and of course all that styling will then apply to that ID. But you can also assign a class to anything that you want. And if I call this section no padding, now I could go to my advanced size, go to sizing and spacing, and I could take out that padding so that it doesn't have any left and right, or up and down, sorry, and I could also make the background of that particular one whatever color that I might want. Now what's great is that that is then applied to this class, and if I wanted to get rid of that, I can go ahead and say, you know what, I don't really want that anymore, but I'm going to copy that CSS selector. I'm going to delete that, and you'll see all of those styles go away. But now I could add that back if I knew the exact name of that class, no padding, space, you'll see that it's applied back. So those are saved as global CSS styles, which you can easily use, or global CSS classes, shall we say. The new version of Oxygen does make this a lot easier because it will automatically come up with the class names as you're typing, and that's in the next version, I'm sure, which will be out there soon. Anyway, you'll also want to look at, while you're here in this size, of course you can go down the page and you can see all the different elements, and you can click on them to see what their settings are, and you'll see you've got a lot of great features in here. But over on the right hand side we want to explore these features as well. Number one is the structure panel. The structure panel allows you to see the structure of your site, and this is where things are a little different than some of the other builders. You can design any structure you want. If you want to take a section such as the one that let's go to the testimonial section. Here you can see the 3 columns, and we have the text and the heading. If I wanted to wrap these with a div and then put both inside that same div, I could do that. Now I could do anything that I wanted with that div. I can go ahead and make it align to the middle and the top. I can make the width 100%. Whoops, I need to change that to 100%. And then I could go ahead and give that a background color. And I could change my padding to be 30 pixels on the top and 30 pixels on the bottom. So you really have any kind of flexibility that you want. And if you didn't like that, you could take this stuff out, put it back into the main section, and you could delete that div. So do be aware that in the default version of Oxygen, you only have one undo, so you have to undo things at that exact moment. But in upcoming versions, maybe they'll have that expanded. And of course there are plugins that help you deal with undos as well, which we might introduce you to later. Anyway, this panel is great. You can rename items if you want to, so you can rename them to whatever you like, and that helps you notice what your structure is in your page. And of course you can drag and drop things around as well to reorder them. So that gives you that structure that you're used to in a hand coding environment. In fact, you can wrap anything you want with a div. You can even put spans inside of certain text if you want. So now that span is inside that text, which means now I can style just those 3 letters exactly the way that I want. So lots and lots of flexibility. Now over on the right hand side, you also want to notice this Manage panel. Here you've got settings, and the settings are actually for global settings of the entire website. For example, I can go to my colors and I can see that I've got global colors, which right now I don't have any with this because I'm using the atomic design set, and here you can see all the global colors that came with the atomic design set. But if I wanted to add my own, I could say, hey, let's add our own custom red. Now what's cool about this is if I go back to my elements, I can then go and choose that red color and assign it to that object. Now this maybe not be the best way to name this. Red 1 is maybe not the best name, but that's okay. We'll play with it anyway. You'll see that I have the ability to actually change that color at any time, and it will now be a global change. So now I'll come back, click on that, and you'll see that global red 1 has been changed to blue, and obviously I say, well, that's a mistake because this is supposed to be red. And now I'll change that red color, click off of it, click back on it, whoops, click on the element itself, and you'll see that that global color is now changed. And that will happen throughout the entire website. So things like global colors are awesome. Really awesome. You also have global fonts that you can deal with, global heading styles, global body text styles, link styles, width and breakpoints, so you can assign all the breakpoints that you want, global section settings, which I usually take out my padding from the top and bottom, and then I assign it when I want to. And then another nice thing is here where you can smooth scroll to hash links, and then there's some other things that you can check out as well. Now we can also see style sheets that are here, and if I wanted to add a main style sheet, I can add that main style sheet, and then here are my main styles. Main, headings, color, blue. I'm not sure why I'm giving it that color, but what's nice about this is that this now is a global style sheet that can be used throughout the site. And you'll see they had one for atomic, and the one that says uncategorized is the one that is actually with your current site without, making your own folder. The next thing is selectors. Now, when you assign elements, or when you select an element and you assign IDs to them, those are actually saved in your selectors. So you'll see that with the atomic, since we're using the atomic design library, you'll see that there are a bunch of different classes that are already set, and you can click on one of those and then go to the advanced tab, see what settings have been changed. You'll see they're blue here, and the typography. It looks like the text alignment is the only thing that's in there, but you can then make that change to that class so that it's used that way throughout the entire site. Now if you look here at the top and it says uncategorized, these are probably going to be ones that you haven't done anything with, but you can see that one class that I created which shows me the settings for size and spacing that I might have done. And I thought, well, it should have the padding of 0, but okay, I did. There's my background color, and then I thought it had padding of 0 top and bottom, but it doesn't really matter. You can see that that is there. It could be that I applied that to the settings of the ID instead of the section, so who knows. Anyway, you do want to explore those selectors as well. There's something else in here under selectors called Selection Detector, but that's something for a little bit later. Anyway, if you have made any changes and you want to save it, you would then save that page at that point. What that does is save a shortcode. So I'm going to go back to my admin for this page and take a look at what's kind of going on. So when you have Oxygen installed, you'll see this Oxygen panel that appears here. If you currently have the edit with Oxygen, you certainly can go in, be aware that when you first make a page, it won't actually allow you to edit it with Oxygen until you've saved that page. Um, Over here, you'll see where you can render it with different templates that you've designed. And one of the things that's really important about Oxygen is to realize that it is everything. It is your template. You don't actually use the templates when you have Oxygen installed. It uses Oxygen for everything. And we'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. Now, what Oxygen generates is a bunch of shortcodes. If you're used to something like Divi, you might realize that it works kind of the same way. So, it's both a benefit and a problem, of course, and that is that if you have all these shortcodes and you turn off Oxygen, well, then you really don't have anything anymore. You can't see anything in the page. And so that's why I use Oxygen for my templates and maybe some pages that have more advanced content, and then I use Gutenberg for other content, and we will discuss that as we look at future tutorials coming up in this series. Now, another thing that you can do is make this page editable in Gutenberg. That only happens when you have the Gutenberg plugin installed as well. And then down here you might see where it says design set features. So let me go down below. And if you're using design sets and you have this particular site set up as a design set, here's where you can control how that will look. Now, design sets is for another set of tutorials later on, even though we'll introduce you to it just a little bit in the next set of tutorials. So looking at some of the other things, we need to look at the settings of Oxygen itself. So I'm going to go to those settings. I'm going to leave this page because I don't really need to save anything there. And so here's a warning that happens a lot, and that's where I've made changes. I've added like global styles and other things like that, and I might need to regenerate the CSS cache. Now, I generally turn off CSS caching when I'm developing a site, and then I'll turn that on when it's ready to actually launch. So there's the CSS cache. Let's go back to general. I use a lot of advanced custom fields, so I would turn that on. The Selector Detector is another really nice advanced feature that if you are interested in being able to style other elements of your page with Oxygen, that is something you want to turn on and find out more about. But going through the tabs, you'll see that we have the ability to basically keep everyone except for admins from editing any of the Oxygen content, but you can assign them access if you want, so you can give them full access if you want. The post type manager is something that I always go and change, and I typically hide Oxygen on everything except for those types of content that I want people to be able to edit Oxygen on, which for me is typically any other custom post type that I've created. I hide Oxygen on and only enable it on the page and maybe some sort of Oxygen library that I might have going on. Security is an interesting feature in Oxygen because it uses shortcode signing with the security in order to verify that it is the correct shortcodes. So sometimes you have to re-sign this, especially when you go from one server to another, like you've migrated this content to a different server. You would want to re-sign those shortcodes, otherwise it might not work. Now, another thing that might keep Oxygen from working correctly are your Ssl settings. So it's really important that if you are planning on using HTTPS SSL certificate, go ahead and install that and make sure that you have a plugin that forces SSL on all content before you start editing in Oxygen. Otherwise, Oxygen doesn't play well when it has a mixed environment of HTTP and HTTPS. It just will not save sometimes. So you want to make sure that you've done that. Some other nice features in here, you've got your license, obviously, that you would put in your code for your integration. You've got your CSS cache we looked at. You have a bloat eliminator, which allows you to disable certain features of WordPress, which is nice. And then you've got the library. And this is one of the things that differentiates the way that Oxygen works from others. First off, you have the ability to enable the default design sets, and we'll look at those design sets when we look at our next set of tutorials, where we build a website from scratch using Oxygen. But you also have the ability to use third-party design sets and to make this WordPress install a design set. If I click OK, what's cool about this is here you can add a design set, and if you have a key from a different design set, which I guess that's a key, hopefully that's worked. So yeah, there's where I have a design set for, I've got a concert website that I'm designing, and I'm able to share my templates from my concert website into this website by using that third-party design set and pulling in that code. And so here's the code for this site that you could then use the templates that you've designed here and the pages you've designed here on a different website. It's really, really kind of cool how easy and flexible it can be for you to share content across multiple sites using Oxygen. So really great feature. Last thing here, right over on the left, is this export and import. Here's where you can export all of your global styles and import it into another site. So really quite nice for sure. So this is just a little introduction to Oxygen at this point. We're going to continue with the next tutorial and actually start a website from scratch instead of going with a pre-built website. So when I come back to Oxygen Builder install or try, we're going to do a blank install in the next set of tutorials. So join me for that next.